Hello, and welcome to Levels Plus Whenever, episode 115. Today, we're gonna talk about Halloween video games and rank them to figure out the 13 best. But first, we have many pickups to do. Many. It's frightening how many.
So I got the Best Buy acrylic Zelda Echoes of Wisdom doodad in the mail because for whatever reason Nintendo can't seem to get the timing right for shipping these with the game. So they always show up a little late. They did that with Princess Peach, they did it with Zelda. So I just had to mail it, and I got it faster than I would have gotten it just waiting for it to show up at Best Buy. And I have gotten wave 1 of my NES purchases for Femtendo. So let's run through those. So, Double Dragon 3. I bought this for the Famicom already, but the ending boss is completely different between localizations. So, had to get both. Barker Build Trick Shooting. The woman in the rabbit outfit is a character in the game, and that's who I'll be covering. This is a license, but it's so obscure of a license, I don't think people realize it's a license. So I'm covering it. A Clash at Demon Head. I was having trouble getting a hold of Dengeki Big Bang. So I went and got the North American version. Abadox. I have not seen the Japanese version of this, but there is a woman at the end that's kind of interesting, so I want to cover that. Wizards and Freaking Warriors, finally. The final game for Femtendo 87. Skate or Die 2, an exclusive NES sequel to the PC game that has a few women in it. Star Tropics. Nice to have this again. Super Spike V-Ball. I'm not getting too many more sports games, but this one is kind of interesting because women players were added, but they were not finished. So you have to Game Genie this game to get them to come out, which I think is interesting. And oddly enough, Circuits Caper, which has the manual with it. This is a terrible game. But it has enough of a woman character in it, as well as a couple enemies, that I thought, you know what, it's cheap, and I wasn't expecting a manual to come with it, so that's great. Those came from Fair Games Retro Shop? Something like that. Fair Game Video Games. And they were fast, very fast, so I'll probably order from them again if they have more stuff that I need in the future. Let's do the Femtendo stuff first. I got an order from World 8 down in Los Angeles. They had a bunch of Famicom carts that I could use. So here is... There we go, kind of see it there. Idol Hakenden. Tau. What is Battle of Olympus here? Sansara Naga. Momotaru Den Setsu Gaiden. Monster Maker. And Ko Fuku O Yobu Game Dora Dora Dora. I also got a new copy of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night for the PS4. Along with those, I got a pop-up parade of Ed and Ein from Cowboy Bebop. Long overdue. As well as Blue Mary from Storm Collectibles. Street Fighter 6 pushed me over the edge. Alright, that's it for this wave. We'll see how many more there are. I've got Pepper Grinder. There we go. For the Switch. Excited to play that. I enjoyed the demo. I got Sable from Super Rare Games. Excited to give that a go. Okay, and then I got the Japanese deluxe version of Sunsoft is Back Retro Game Selection, which still has plastic on it. And that came with a bunch of goodies. So it comes with a lanyard and a ID thing for some inexplicable reason. They thought it was cool. Whatever. It came with 2 keychains. One with the Sunsoft is Back logo and one of some item that's in one of these games. I don't know what. The main reason I got these, though, is that it actually published some of the doshinji that the Wings of Medulla and Ripple Island artists did on their own. Totally untranslated because this is a Japanese thing, but it's pretty neat. The art inside is well done. So there's a sample of what it looks like on the inside, and you can actually see that little bird. So yeah, it's an item from Wing of Medulla, apparently. Really cool, and then it came in a pretty nice box that I'll put up with all the other nice boxes. Oh, right. I get to redo this one because I forgot to turn the microphone on. So, I'll go ahead and point over there. There's a Zelda Echoes of Wisdom bag that came from my Nintendo that I hung up over there. I got Emio the Smiling Man, Famicom Detective Club. I got Pit from Kid Icarus Uprising / Smash. I got a pop-up parade of Sukuna from Sukuna Rise and Ruin. I always liked this character. I pre-ordered it back when it was going to be a thing, but had to cancel it. So I was glad to see that it was a good price later on. I need to finish that game. And I have the beginnings of some Mario kitchenware. So I've got a oven. I forget what these are called. It's an oven thing. This is an oven mitt. I know that. The fun of recording at 5 a.m. The funny thing about these is that they are not red, to me at least. They are very bright orange. So I'm not really sure what happened there. I also got a set of Mario-themed plates that I'm going to find a home for. But there's Peach. It's a little hard to see, but there is some background detail as well. Here's Mario. Here's Luigi being punked by Spiny for some reason. And here's Toad. I like these a lot. I have a couple other things that either are at the post office waiting to get picked up. I have some items in the washer because I've been wearing them since I initially recorded things. But I think what I'm going to do is I'll grab those couple items as well as the last few things coming in, and we will just do a final pickup finale because this has been probably the most epic series of pickups I've ever had on this channel. Alright, let's wrap this up, because this video is going to come out a little before a couple other things are due to arrive. I have this Metroid sweatshirt. It's got a Samus patch on the sleeve, her visor on the front. I really like it. It's also incredibly soft and cozy. So I'm happy that I got that. I also got the last thing from my Nintendo order, and it is these jars, but you know, they don't look particularly interesting at the moment. It probably would help if the screen glare was just a little bit darker. But they've got this nice little Mushroom Kingdom motif on the edges, much like the plates. There's 4 of them. They each have kind of their own vibe. So here's the green one. But they all came with lids that have the respective character that they're for. And last but not least is Mario. I'm really happy with these as well as the plates. I just don't know what I'm doing with them quite yet. But that is the end, for now, of all of the things, pickup-wise, that I've gotten while we were away. So, let's get on with the main content of this video. Halloween games.
Well, here we are.
I went through every game I've played that I've at least documented that I've played. There's probably a few I forgot. That captures the essence of Halloween in some way and put them on a list. So there's 84 games here. Let me just quickly, before we do anything, explain my rationale for some of these, because you're probably looking at a few and going, why is that on here? I don't think that's a Halloween game. So there's a few criteria I had for the games to be included in any fashion. One is it an actual horror game? So like your Resident Evils, your Silent Hills, your Dead Spaces, very thematically horror based. Is it a game that utilizes monsters or demons in some way? So that captures like your Devil May Cry, that captures your Darkstalkers, your Bayonettas, etc. 3, is it running with horror motifs? Even if it's not a horror game per se. So that kind of falls into like Splatterhouse, and the Ninja Kids, Luigi's Mansion. That's where all those are there. Last but not least, is the game something that has a scary feeling or vibe to it, at least in some portion of the game? So, like, that would explain why Metroid Fusions is on here, because I think the SAX is absolutely terrifying. That would explain why Alien Storm is on here, because there's some very graphic alien combat in that game. Second Sight is a psychological thriller, which I felt had enough of a reason to be included as a potential Halloween game. So those are basically the criteria that I had to include the games that you see before you. But we're determining the top Halloween games here, not just all of the Halloween-esque games I have played over the years. So we're going to eliminate stuff. We're going to get this down to a top, I don't know, what's a top 13. That's a good Halloween number. I'd do 31, but then that would be a very big list still. But, you know, the 13th has a lot of connotations with horror, thanks to a certain movie franchise that has one representative on this list. So we'll get this to a top 13. So, first round of eliminations. I'm going to get rid of games I don't like. Because I'm not going to think too highly of their Halloween vibes if I don't even like playing it. So, let's start at the top here. And we'll just work through all of the games and eliminate ones I don't like. So, Nintendo's safe. I at least like these 5 games. I like these 2 Devil May Cry games. Resident Evil 3 Remake was a disappointment. Resident Evil 6 is one of my least favorite games of all time. RE5 does not really feel like a horror game in contrast to the others. Let's see. Darkstalker's totally going to stay on this list. The Ghosts and Goblins games I have some nitpicks with in terms of difficulty. I will never beat these games without cheating. But they're very on point with everything else. So I'm going to leave them for now. Same with the Firebrand trilogy. I didn't like Maximo. Oh, Castlevania. All the Castlevanias I've beaten are at least good. I'm going to get rid of Haunted Castle, though, because my feelings on that is very well stated. Silent Hill 4, The Room, and Shattered Memories, I'm going to just get rid of right now. Dark Adventure, probably the first game that is one of the questionable ones. And it's one that I don't feel really captures the vibe. It just has ghosts and demons and stuff that you fight. But it doesn't really feel like a Halloween game. Life Force is a lot of body horror. That's why it and R-Type's here. It's not a scary game at all. It's just that the visual aesthetics are very unsettling. But I don't think that it's really a Halloween game. I'm going to do the same for R-Type. Ninja Kids is goofy, but again, you're fighting Satan. You deal with werewolves. It feels appropriate. Sasuke and Commander is a very early game, but it's a pretty intense game, honestly. You definitely feel like you are one against many. And it's kind of neat, but I don't think it really fits the vibe. SAR, though, I think kind of does for a space horror game. Alien Storm, Alien Syndrome, Altered Beast. These 3 are kind of here for aesthetics. I think Alien Syndrome is the strongest of the 3 in terms of the aesthetics, because it really captures both that alien horror vibe very well, but it also is a very tense feeling game. So I want to keep at least that of these 3. Altered Beast I don't like. Alien Storm I do like. And if it's again just dealing with alien body horror. Is that enough to carry it? Because I don't know if the rest of the vibes really match, so I don't think it is. Bayonetta can hang out for a little bit. Baraduke is another space arcade game that doesn't really scream Halloween, but it's a very tense feeling game. It makes you very on edge playing it, with really good music and sound effects. I think I'm going to leave it for now, but it probably will get cut in the second round. Splatterhouse has to stay for aesthetic purposes. Gremlins 2, the game. Gremlins 2 is based on a movie, of course. And the second movie kind of moved away from the horror elements for more humor and more family value, is my general feeling of that movie. So I don't think it's going to really stick it out. That was my obligatory self-conclusion. I despise Dead Space 3. And you know what? I think I totally forgot about Dead Space 3 when I was doing my bottom 100. It should have been on there. But the other Dead Space games can stay. Night Slashers gets to stay. Half-Life I think I'll keep. Bioshock I'll keep. Body Harvest. Body Harvest is a fascinating game. It's an end-of-the-world situation with humans being captured by alien insects to be harvested. So, I feel that it at least captures that horror element really well. The gameplay itself isn't necessarily spooky or scary, but you know, you definitely feel the tension of fighting the aliens before they eat everybody. So I'm gonna leave it on here for now. I don't like Decap Attack. I don't like Friday the 13th. I don't like Jaws. Shadow Hearts can stay because I think it is the most successful of the role-playing games I've played to capture horror. Although the dub is atrocious and it has some ideas that I don't care for. Zombie U can go. I haven't played enough of Hexen to really have a strong opinion, but it does have some horror elements, but I don't think it's what people think of it as. The Last of Us can stay. I've got feelings about it. We'll get into it in a minute. I don't like this game. Jaja Maru-kun has a lot of yokai and such, and it is a game that I have quote-unquote beaten, but I don't really feel like the vibes are right. I despise this game. Muramasa gets to stay. I'm just going to scoot it over. Robotron is one of the tensest video games ever made. I'm going to keep it just for that reason alone. Second Sight can stay. Bloodstained can stay. Tachia deals a lot with spirits and with cultural, like mythology and such for the Patagonian people. And its main antagonist is quite intimidating and scary in a very fascinating way. The game itself is very cute though, and I think that the majority of the plot doesn't really revolve around being scary. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut it, but I think it's a fantastic game. Yearwalk and The Last Door are definitely spoopy. So I think I'll leave those. So let me sort this back up and see where we're at. Alright, we've eliminated 2 rows. So we still got a ways to go. So round 2, I'm going to really start cutting things that I don't really feel Halloween about, and some of these have been here because they capture one of those elements I mentioned earlier, but I don't think Dread at the very least fits the bill. I'm gonna go ahead and cut anything that has strong sci-fi elements because I feel like that would be kind of its own list unless it's specifically a horror game. So that means that Robotron's going out. Body Harvest is going out. I feel like BioShock and Half-Life are utilizing horror elements in their gameplay, so I'm going to keep them. SAR, I'm going to cut. Dead Space is specifically chilling in that horror vibe. Veriduke is not. But I feel Alien Syndrome can hang out because I think that it is really utilizing horror very effectively. And we'll just scoot things a little outside of these button zones. Next, I'm going to cut games that I don't think are the strongest ones in their respective franchises. So, Devil May Cry 1, because I think 3 is the best one. I'm going to keep RE Remake. Both RE2s. Nemesis can go. Both RE4s. I'm going to go ahead and cut Code Veronica and Village. I'm going to cut Night Warriors, because I think Darkstalkers 3 is a little bit better. Let's go ahead and scoot those, and we'll just move that here. Ghost Trick. Ghost Trick, despite being about ghosts, doesn't feel very Halloween-y to me. And as much as I love that game, I'm going to cut 2 of these Ghosts and Goblins games. I like Ghouls and Ghosts the most. And I'm going to cut 2 of these Demons Firebrand games. so Demon's Crest gets to stay. It's definitely got the strongest vibes. Let's see. I did 1, 2, 5 Resident Evils. Let's do 5 Castlevanias. So I think the original Castlevania, I think Rondo of Blood, Symphony, Aria, and out of what's left, which has the best vibes? Portrait is my favorite if I were to do a top 5 of Castlevania, but I don't think it's the strongest vibes of capturing Halloween. I happen to think that Bloodlines or Order of Ecclesia would grab that spot, and I'm gonna give it to Order because I think I like it just a tiny bit more than Bloodlines. Just a tiny bit. Because I don't want this list to be just packed full. And Kid Dracula is cute. It's definitely running with the parody spin-off vibes of Castlevania, but it's not the strongest game. Silent Hill's gonna break the rules. I think all 3 of these games are fantastic, and I'm gonna keep them all for now. Dead Space and Dead Space 2 are gonna stay up here, but Extraction can go. Night Slashers for sure. Splatterhouse for sure. Bloodstained for sure. Bioshock, Shadow Hearts. I think The Last of Us deserves some consideration. I think Muramasa deserves some consideration. Half-Life. Yearwalk. Ninja Kids is very goofy, but I still think it captures the vibes. Alien Syndrome is probably the best of the sci-fi themed not Dead Space games on this list still, so I'm going to let that stay. Bayonetta's dealing with more devils, quote unquote, because they wanted to differentiate from Devil May Cry over at Platinum, but I don't really get horror vibes from it the same way I do with the Devil May Cry series. The Last Door I haven't played in a very long time. I remember it being pretty spooky, but because I didn't play the entire season, like the entire series. I played the first season. I don't really feel comfortable keeping it. It was also something heavily tied to someone I don't like thinking about. Second Sight, I think, is a very good psychological game, but the gameplay has a hard time keeping up with the ambition of the storytelling. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Alright, we are making progress. We are now at 35. If I wanted to do 31, we've only got 4 more to go. But I feel like I've done a good job of eliminating a lot of the cruft out of this. And now it's going to probably be among the more difficult asks to eliminate a whole bunch more stuff. So let's begin round 4, I think. I think we're officially there. Fusion, if it wasn't for the SAX, I wouldn't even be here. And I don't think the SAX, as memorable and as well crafted as that enemy is, makes up for a lot of the other aspects of that game I don't like. Eternal Darkness, really good premise. Definitely the most horror thing that Nintendo's put out for adults, I'll say. But there is some issues with the gameplay. It really would shine getting a remake, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it, because it's not one of my favorites. Majora's Mask is the spookiest, most surreal Zelda, so I want to hold on to it for now. And Luigi's Mansion is a very silly haunted house, which is perfect for Halloween vibes. Darkstalkers 3 is a game full of monsters fighting each other with really good animation, and in my opinion is the best of that series, so I want to hold on to it. Devil May Cry 3 Out of the Devil May Cry games I've played, which is currently only 2, it's the best one. It's silly, but it's also full of demons and a lot of gothic vibes. I feel it captures what we would look for in a Halloween-y game. Ghouls and Ghosts and Demon's Crest, I think, also are still safe for now. I'm going to go ahead and cut RE2 and RE4 original. We'll not narrow the Resident Evils down to my personal 3 that I think best capture that essence. Castlevania is, I'm going to do the same thing. So Order of Ecclesia, since that was the debatable one's out. I definitely think the original needs to stay because it's set the tone. Out of the 3 that remain, if I'm going to knock it down to 3, Ari is probably the odd one out because it's set in the future. And it's the least atmospheric because it's a Game Boy Advance game. As much as I love this game, you're going to find out how much I love this game. I'm going to go ahead and remove it from the list because I don't think it's got as strong of vibes as the 3 that remain. I'm going to cut 1 Silent Hill, and it's the first one. I think 2 and 3 are the top of that series. Both Dead Spaces are going to get to stay for the time being. I really like Night Slashers. It's probably one of the best beat-em-ups I've ever played, and it's easily Data East's best game. So it gets to stay. I don't like Splatterhouse. It got this far because it's a very horror-themed game, but I don't like playing it, and it grosses me out. So, I guess it wins on the over-the-top factor, but nah. Bloodstained, I don't like its visuals. I think that going 3D was not the path they should have taken, and I realized that that game had a troubled development in a way, with Inti Create stepping out midway through for Way Forward to take over, and Way Forward had to do a lot to kind of fix it. It's very, very good otherwise, but it doesn't really capture the visual that I want. BioShock we're going to keep for now. Shadow Hearts we're going to keep for now. And then I want to fill these last 2 holes, and then we'll move on. So here's the thing about The Last of Us. The Last of Us made it this far because it is essentially a horror-themed game. You're dealing with fungus zombies. It's very tense. There's moments of this game I don't like. I feel like the section with Bill, with him stomping around everywhere, or the kid that joins you stomping around everywhere, broke a lot of the tension because they're making so much noise, but the fungus zombies don't react. I made a comic about this. That where the zombies only react to the main character. I know from a gameplay perspective, it makes sense to do that, because that would be annoying. But from a immersion perspective, it bothered me. There's also things about The Last of Us, especially with the sequel and everything I heard about it, that made me just kind of not want to play it. So my feelings on The Last of Us is that it's a very good video game, and it should probably stay on this list. But I've got some beefs with it that are going to kick it off. Muramasa is a great game. Probably my second favorite Vanillaware game. I just wish it dealt with women better, and which is a constant complaint I have with Vanillaware. I forget her name. I think it's like Momohime. She's possessed by a dude through the whole game. So you're not really playing her, you're playing a dude in her body, and it's just So unfortunately, as much as I love the combat and I love the visuals and everything of that game, I have some issues. Half-Life, I think, is going to continue being on this list. And that just leaves these three, which I think are all good games. The Ninja Kids is probably my least favorite. Vibes are there, but gameplay not so much. Year Walk I haven't played in a very long time, but I remember being very spooky, but it's also pretty short. So I'm gonna dark horse it. We're gonna Alien Syndrome into the final round. All right, friends, we are at the top 21 Halloween games. There, now it even says it. And I feel pretty good where we're at, but I did say 13. So this is where cutting some other things is going to have to take place, and we're going to get really into the best of the best here. So there's a couple games on here that I think are coasting in on my goodwill more than my enjoyment, and that's Majora's Mask, that's Shadow Hearts, and that's Alien Syndrome. Those games and Luigi's Mansion. Those four games are good, but I don't love them. I want to get to the games that I love. On that note, I also want to have a little bit more variety. So I don't want to have this list be full of 3 games. So that means that I'm going to cut a Resident Evil and I'm going to cut a Castlevania. And in my opinion, the Castlevania is easier. I think it's Rondo. Because I think Symphony of the Night just is the total package in terms of gothic vibes. And Castlevania Rondo of Blood kind of wanders around a few different places, and the music isn't really as atmospheric. It's good. It's excellent. But I think that it doesn't quite have the horror vibes I want. For Resident Evil, I think the OG remake absolutely has to stay. And I think out of these two, I think they did such a great job with RE4 Remake in terms of making it still an action game, but upping the horror aspect considerably. And I feel like with RE2 that there was quite a bit lost in that remake. They lost a lot of enemies. There's no spiders, for example. While it does have one of the most intense horror segments that I've ever played with Sherry, it's very mechanically simplified. You basically have to do the same thing every time you do that sequence. So for the first time, it's phenomenal, but replays, it gets kind of tedious. So as much as I love RE2 Remake, I think it's going to be between RE4 and the original RE here. Alright, that was a good row elimination. So that puts us at 7, 14, 15. 2 more. I don't really like playing Ghouls and Ghosts. Gonna be honest. We could be honest. We're an honesty town at this point. Yeah, I'm just gonna move Half-Life there. Out of these 14 games, I'm gonna cut one that may surprise you, and that's OG Dead Space. And the reason I'm cutting OG Dead Space is there is a segment in that game that is terrible. And the rest of these, I can't say that. The turret sequence in the original Dead Space is horrible. It's very, very high bar in terms of clearing. You have to be really good at aiming. And it's really the low point. So I think we've gotten to 13, and I don't have a way to get rid of this one little white box. But I feel like this is a very solid list. It's very Capcom and Konami heavy, but they've done such a great job in the arena that I feel like this makes sense to me. So let's quickly run through why. Resident Evil Remake is nearly perfect. It took me a while to see it. When I originally played on the GameCube, I think I was ready for something new, and RE4 then came along and gave me what I wanted. But in retrospect, I think RE Remake is the best of the classic REs outside of RE2 OG. But I think the vibes and the visual aesthetic of this game is off the charts, and it's definitely the horror Resident Evil out of all of them. RE4 is my favorite RE game. The remake made it even better, and like I was saying, the mood and the atmosphere of this game is much improved. It feels less hokey, even though it still has some of that comedy factor, still has a little bit of that silliness. It feels more like a horror game. It feels heavier, not as light. With the original RE4, I never really felt horror. I feel it here, and that's great. That makes me think it deserves to be up here. Darkstalkers 3 is a great fighting game and the sole representative of that genre on this list. And it is just a visual feast for monster fans. You've got all kinds of different types of monsters represented, and beautifully animated. It controls super well. It's got the biggest roster, at least the PS1 version does. But you can get Capcom Fighting Collection and basically resolve that problem in some ways with the... What do they call it? Vampire Savior 2 kind of fixes a little bit of the problem where it swaps some characters around. But the PS1 version is, while it's lacking some animation frames, has all the characters in it. But to represent Darkstalkers, I feel like 3 on the PS1 is the way to go. Devil May Cry 3. It's a great action game. It's the best in the series I've played so far. We'll get to 5 eventually. But I feel like it captures the essence of what I want from a Halloween game. It's very gothic, with wandering around haunted castles, fighting demons. It also has Lady in it, and Lady's one of my favorite Capcom characters. So that helps a lot, and she's quite capable in that game, which also helps a lot. So I just feel like Devil May Cry 3, in terms of the 3D action genre, nails the vibes. Demon's Crest is a fantastically moody action adventure game. It's not really Metroid-y, but it's kind of a search action-y Metroidvania sort. Just it takes things in different directions, but you do need to ultimately get different forms to do different things in the levels. It's a great game, and it's visually one of the best looking games on the Super Nintendo, and it's just vibes, so much vibes. Castlevania had to be on this list. It set the standard for the series, and it was one of the first examples I personally played of a horror influenced video game. And I love it. I still love the original Castlevania, and I feel like it had to be on this list for me for Halloween. Symphony of the Night, on the other hand, introduced the Metroid style into Castlevania, although they say it's more Legend of Zelda-like. Whatever. It's a Metroidvania. And of all of them, I think that it's the moodiest and the most atmospheric and the most luscious of the Castlevania explorathons that followed. Because the Game Boy Advance and the DS games have a lot of compromises, either mechanically because of the hardware that it's on, or because of crunch and time. They just didn't have time to put in the effort. So Symphony of the Night is just a love letter to the series, and it's a love letter to 2D artwork, and it's just beautiful all the way around. Silent Hill 2 and 3 remained on this list. Both of them are great psychological horror games. 2 has one of the best narratives of all time in any video game. Really shows what the medium is capable of. 3, while not as strong, still has a good story. Has my favorite Silent Hill character in Heather, who is like a top 5 woman character for me. And is a phenomenal game that I think does even more with the horror aspects than 2 did. So I think both of them deserve to be on here. Half-Life, wonderful FPS, one of the few that I really like. Just chaos. It's a chaotic game about science going awry, which Valve is very good at capturing in different ways, but with a whole bunch of Cthulhu-esque horror attached to it, and dealing with like head crabs, which are essentially face huggers. One of the most intimidating enemies that I've come across, among many other Lovecraftian horrors. It's a great Halloween game, and it's something I should probably play again and try the sequel out at some point. Dead Space 2 is marvelous. It's a game that's so good that even though there's a section that I absolutely despise, which is the eye section, and if you know, you know, I have a very sensitive reaction to eyes being touched, we'll just say. And I will probably never beat this game again, because somehow I avoided having that fail when I went through it the one time I've beaten the game. And I will never get past that point again, because I heard what it does when somebody else played it. If you fail, and I am not going to submit myself to that. Despite that, it is one of my favorite games of all time. That's how good the rest of it is. And it has a lot of excellent storytelling, characters, and gameplay, all working together to create one of the most intense and thrilling 3D action games, and the closest thing I think to rival Resident Evil on that front. It's a great game. It's a shame that the remake got canceled. I would have loved to have seen Motive actually try it. And I'm looking forward to playing the remake of the original Dead Space for October. Talked a little bit about Night Slashers earlier, but it is Data East's best game. It is one of the best beat-em-ups ever made. And it is fun. It is a fun romp through zombie land with some silliness, but it's also extremely bloody. It just captures what Halloween is kind of all about in its gameplay and its moment-to-moments. It's visually strong, has a great soundtrack, plays well. It's a shame how much Forever screwed that up when they did their remake that literally just came out. That I'm sure they wanted to charge more, but I feel like they were like, we need to just get this out because we're losing money on developing this POS. I'm not buying it just for funsies. I am just going to remain disappointed for the rest of my life about the fact that Forever Entertainment ended up with the license to remake that game. Imagine if Tribute got it, or Way Forward got it, or anyone that has an iota of talent got it. Anyway, BioShock is the last. One of the other FPSs that I do enjoy greatly. I think that it is a very spooky and thrilling game that does a lot with narrative, although it's a bit cliche now and overwrought with some what would be considered ego, I think, that they thought that they had an amazing thing happen in that game. And at the time, I think they did. But you can kind of see the dawning of what would send BioShock Infinite into the abyss of critique and criticism for the rest of its days in the original, in hindsight. But that doesn't matter. I think that it is a phenomenally crafted game, and it's shockingly good. Ha ha! Let's end on a pun. So there you go. Those are the 13 games that I think best represent the Halloween spirit, so to speak.
Thank you for joining me today for this Halloween-themed episode. We'll be back with something else, and a lot less silliness next time. Have a wonderful set of days until we meet again. Take care.